This is the Bobby Heenan the world remembers. The fast-talking, sharp-witted manager in the sequin jacket, guiding giants and kings to the main event of WrestleMania. The man they called the Brain. The voice of a wrestling boom whose back and forth with Gorilla Monsoon became the soundtrack for millions of fans. But before all that, before the fame and the fortune, he was a pretty boy protege in the blood and guts territories of the 1960s. And the empire he would one day command was born by breaking away from the very man who gave him his start. This is the story of how Bobby Heenan learned the rules of the business and then used them to build a legacy. This is the story you probably don't know. To understand the creation of Bobby the Brain Heenan, you have to understand the world that made him. This wasn't the polished, international spectacle of the World Wrestling Federation. This was the gritty, smoke-filled, and brutally real world of the territories. Specifically, Indianapolis, Indiana in the mid-1960s. The undisputed king of this world was a man named William Afflis, known to everyone as Dick the Bruiser. A former NFL player, Dick the Bruiser was everything his name suggesting. With a gravelly voice that sounded like he gargled with nails and a brawling style that was more bar fight than wrestling, he was a legitimate, tough-as-nails local hero. In 1964, he co-founded the World Wrestling Association, or WWA. It was Bruiser's kingdom, built in his own image, hard-hitting, blue-collar, and fiercely independent. Into this world walked a skinny, ambitious kid from Chicago named Raymond Lewis Heenan. After dropping out of school in the 8th grade to help support his family, Heenan, a massive wrestling fan, did anything he could to just be near the business, selling programs, carrying bags, anything. He was a student of the game before he was ever a part of it, watching from the sidelines and absorbing every single detail. It was here, in the orbit of the fearsome Dick the Bruiser, that Heenan got his break. But it wasn't glamorous. Stories from that time paint a picture of a harsh apprenticeship. Heenan was a gopher, and Bruiser, the alpha male of the territory, treated him like one. It was a tough love education, if you could call it love, and Heenan learned about the rigid hierarchy of power that governed the wrestling world. By 1965, the young man had earned his shot as a manager. His name? Pretty boy Bobby Heenan. The gimmick was simple but instantly effective. A cocky, loudmouth kid who was all talk. He was the perfect foil for the rugged, beer-drinking tough guys who dominated the WWA, and he had a natural gift for getting under the skin of the blue-collar crowds. But Heenan was never just a mouthpiece. After wrestling his first match in 1966, promoters saw how naturally he handled the physical side of the business. He was soon booked as both a manager and a wrestler. While he guided villains like the Blackjacks, Blackjack Lanza and Blackjack Mulligan, he would also step into the ring himself, often in tag team matches. He made the heroes look even more powerful as they tossed him around, perfecting the art of taking punishment, or bumping, to a level few could match. He famously said, "I decided I was going to wrestle like a manager and manage like a wrestler." That philosophy was born right here, where he learned his greatest gift was making the audience despise him. But one figure always loomed largest, Dick the Bruiser. Bruiser was not only Heenan's promoter, but also his main rival. Feuds between Heenan's clients and the Bruiser were the bread and butter of the WWA, often with Heenan himself getting in the ring to face the brawling promoter. It was during these rivalries that Bruiser's constant, gravelly-voiced insults on the microphone helped cement a new name for Heenan among the fans: the Weasel. The name was derogatory, but it was also perfect. It captured the essence of his scurrying, opportunistic character. Pretty boy Bobby Heenan was now also the Weasel. He was learning, he was growing, and he was becoming a star. But he was still in Dick the Bruiser's world, playing by Dick the Bruiser's rules, and that wasn't going to sit well with him for long. As the 1960s rolled into the 1970s, Bobby Heenan was no longer just a kid carrying bags. He was an established star in the territorial system. Promoters knew that putting Heenan in a town meant instant heat. For a while, he split his time between Dick the Bruiser's WWA in Indianapolis and Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Association, the AWA, based in Minneapolis. The AWA was a different animal. While the WWA was built on brawling, the AWA presented itself as a more traditional, professional organization. It was a bigger stage with a wider TV footprint. It was here, in the AWA, that Heenan began to see a path beyond being just a ringside pest. He started to envision an empire. The idea of a manager's stable, a group of wrestlers under one banner, wasn't brand new, but Bobby Heenan was about to perfect it. His masterstroke came when he aligned himself with two of the sport's most gifted villains, Nick Bockwinkel and Ray the Crippler Stevens. This pairing was genius. Bockwinkel was the opposite of a brawler like Dick the Bruiser. He was eloquent, arrogant, and spoke with a calm, condescending tone. Stevens was a ruthless veteran with a no-nonsense, vicious streak. Together, with Heenan as their mouthpiece, they were a complete package. Heenan guided them to the AWA World Tag Team Championship, laying the foundation for what would become wrestling's most infamous dynasty. He didn't stop there. He added more wrestlers, creating a collective of elite villains, the tough-as-nails Bobby Duncombe Sr. and his old charge, Blackjack Lanza. This group was the first true version of the Heenan family. Heenan famously hated the term stable, reportedly saying it was a place for fly-infested horses. He called his group a family. It was a subtle but important distinction, implying loyalty, conspiracy, and a united front against all the heroes of the AWA. The Heenan family was a strategic enterprise. With multiple members, they could dominate the entire show. They interfered in each other's matches, creating a numbers game that was almost impossible for any single hero to beat. Heenan was the chess master moving all the pieces. He wasn't just talking for his wrestlers, he was creating a brand. The Heenan family brand stood for arrogance, success, and winning at any cost. Even as he was building this empire in the AWA, he continued to work dates for Dick the Bruiser back in the WWA. But the pretty boy was quickly outgrowing his original home. The scale of the AWA and the level of success he was achieving were pointing toward a future beyond a single regional territory. He had built a foundation of power. He controlled champions, and his name was becoming as big a draw as the wrestlers he managed. A choice was coming. And for a man as ambitious as Bobby Heenan, that choice would be driven by opportunity and money. The year is 1974. Bobby Heenan makes a huge decision. He leaves Dick the Bruiser's WWA for good and commits full-time to Vern Gagne's AWA. This wasn't just a change of address, it was a declaration. He was betting on himself and the bigger platform the AWA provided. And upon his full-time arrival, he needed a new identity. The Pretty Boy moniker was retired. Wrestling lore says it was because the AWA already had a prominent pretty boy, Larry the Axe Hennig, but whatever the reason, Heenan needed a name to match his elevated status. And how did he get the new name? As the story goes, it was his client, the cunning Ray Stevens, who offhandedly suggested it. The line stuck. When he re-emerged, he wasn't Pretty Boy Bobby Heenan anymore. He was Bobby the Brain Heenan. The name was perfect. It signaled a huge evolution of his character. He was no longer just an obnoxious kid. He was a master strategist, a Machiavellian genius. The Weasel nickname still followed him, used by his enemies, but the Brain was the title he claimed for himself. It was a promotion that reflected his role as the architect of the dominant Heenan family. And dominate they did. With the Brain at the helm, the family became an unstoppable force. But the crowning achievement, the moment that solidified Heenan's status as the top manager in the sport, came on November 8, 1975. On that night, with the Brain in his corner, Nick Bockwinkel defeated Vern Gagne to win the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. Gagne wasn't just any champion. He was the founder of the AWA and had held the title for over 7 years. Dethroning him was a monumental event. And at the center of it all was Bobby Heenan, manager of a recognized world champion for the first time. By 1976, Heenan was in a rare and dominant position. He simultaneously managed the AWA World Heavyweight Champion in Nick Bockwinkel and the AWA World Tag Team Champions in Lanza and Duncombe. He held the keys to all the gold in the kingdom. The partnership between Heenan and Bockwinkel, in particular, was a masterclass. Bockwinkel was already an articulate talker who arguably didn't even need a manager. But Heenan didn't just speak for him, he amplified him. Their promos were legendary. Heenan would launch into a wild, hysterical tirade, drawing all the heat, and then the composed, eloquent Bockwinkel would step in to calmly run down his opponent and the humanoids in the audience. In the ring, Heenan was the ultimate insurance policy. He was a master of creating controversial finishes that kept the title on his champion. A well-timed distraction, tripping an opponent, or getting himself punched to cause a disqualification. Heenan would do whatever it took. This was Bobby Heenan at his absolute peak in the territories. He had created a persona, built an empire, and then rebranded himself as its genius mastermind. He was now, in the eyes of many, the most successful and brilliant manager in all of professional wrestling. The final split between Bobby Heenan and the WWA wasn't a dramatic on-screen storyline. It was a cold, hard business decision. A dispute over a paycheck. The setting was Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, a brand new 18,000-seat venue. For the WWA, running a building this size was a huge financial risk, and the first ever wrestling event there needed to be a blockbuster. Bobby Heenan, as one of the territory's top draws, was a key part of that show. According to Heenan's own accounts, when it came time to get paid, he felt he was shortchanged by the promoter, Dick the Bruiser. The exact figures are lost to time, but the principle was crystal clear to Heenan. He had been a loyal employee, a heat magnet who helped sell tickets. From his perspective, he had earned a major share of the profits from this huge show, and he didn't get it. For Heenan, this was the final straw. It was about more than money. It was about respect. It was a signal that, in Bruiser's eyes, he was still just the pretty boy kid, not the star he knew he had become. So, he walked. Heenan stated that after this dispute, he never returned to the WWA. This was a monumental decision. He was turning his back on the promotion that gave him his start and the man who had been his first mentor. In the territorial days, leaving your home promotion over a direct conflict with the promoter was a significant and risky move. It was a professional betrayal. Heenan chose ambition over loyalty. He saw his future not in the brawling halls of Indianapolis, but in the larger arenas of the AWA, where he was already building his empire. He gambled on himself, confident his skills were valuable enough to thrive without the safety net of his home promotion. This moment is the critical turning point in Heenan's story. It's where the protégé breaks from the master. This act of defiance, born from a pay dispute, is what propelled him full-time into the AWA and set the stage for his transformation into the Brain. He had learned the ruthless nature of the business firsthand, and he was now using that lesson to his own advantage. He would no longer work for a king. He would be the power behind the throne. When Vince McMahon began his national expansion in 1984, he wasn't just buying up territories. He was poaching their biggest stars. And when he looked to the AWA, he saw the single greatest manager in the business. McMahon lured Bobby Heenan to the World Wrestling Federation, and the foundation Heenan had built in the territories became the blueprint for his legendary WWF run. The Heenan family was reborn, bigger than ever. The strategic genius he had honed in the AWA was now on a global stage. The lessons he learned managing Nick Bockwinkel to the world title were applied to managing King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 2 and, most famously, Andre the Giant against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3. The Weasel chants, first started in small Indianapolis arenas, now rained down from 20,000-seat coliseums across the country. He transitioned seamlessly into commentary, forming an iconic duo with Gorilla Monsoon. Their chemistry, with Heenan's snarky villainy and Monsoon's exasperated defense of the rules, became the gold standard. Every skill that made him a WWF icon was forged in the fire of those forgotten years. His knack for taking spectacular bumps, his masterful mic work, and the very concept of the family all became staples of modern wrestling storytelling. His later career in WCW saw him transition almost exclusively to commentary, partly due to debilitating neck injuries accumulated over his long career. The final years of his life were marked by a tragic battle with health issues that silenced one of the most gifted voices the industry has ever known. But to remember Bobby Heenan only for his time in the WWF and WCW is to see the finished sculpture without understanding the years spent chipping away at the stone. He wasn't a character created by a corporate machine. He was a self-made man who learned his craft in the trenches. He was the pretty boy who endured a harsh apprenticeship, the weasel who outsmarted the system, and the brain who built an empire on talent and ruthless ambition. The showdown with Dick the Bruiser over a paycheck wasn't just an anecdote. It was the moment a protégé declared he had surpassed his teacher. The cunning and wit that captivated millions weren't born in a TV studio in Stamford. They were cultivated in places like Indianapolis and Minneapolis, where a young man from Chicago decided he wouldn't just play the game, but change it forever. Bobby the Brain Heenan left an indelible mark on professional wrestling, and the foundation of his genius was built long before most of the world ever knew his name. So I've got to ask you, what is your favorite Bobby Heenan moment? Whether it was a classic line of commentary, a ringside antic, or a promo, let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look back at wrestling history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that shaped the sport. Thanks for watching.